Thank you, Madam Mayor. Hopefully I'm not standing up for 20 minutes delivering this, because it'll be a long night otherwise. As already mentioned by Councillor Head, last May I received the privilege of becoming leader of Thurrock Council. I inherited a budget I did not agree with, a budget that we were told was too small to supply basic services like street cleaning, grass cutting, pothole filling. A budget where the reserves hadn't been reviewed for a full 6 years, although, in good fairness to Councillor Kent, had increased to a much more acceptable level. A budget where, despite repeated calls for a complete change in the approach, the previous administration were doing the same thing again and again and expecting a different result. Well, I know Councillor Duffy will understand that jibing statement there clearly, and in the same way of continuing. This was a budget that was frankly dying the death of 1,000 cuts. In the 9 months since taking administration, we have seen the highest number of unaccompanied asylum seeker children, just over 100, and unbudgeted pressure costing the Thurrock taxpayer £3.2 million since June alone. Staffing levels were cut to the bone from previous budgets, vital equipment was either sold or unserviceable, claims that we would overspend would wipe out reserves in a matter of weeks. Significant increases in criminal organised fly tipping and unlawful incursions were causing our green space to be dumped on and become diminished. However, 9 months later, I bring you the results of that same budget, the same amount of money, where we have put the priorities of Thurrock residents first. As I say, remember, the same amount of money we had last year, and we've delivered an increase in the street cleaners, an increase in the number of enforcement officers in the environment team, with residents now saying how much nicer areas of the borough looks. All parks no longer had grass long enough to lose a small child in, as I found on literally day one of state administration. Fly tipping and incursion hotspots are beginning to become target hardened. Thousands of extra bags of rubbish are off our streets. Hundreds of acres of extra grass have been cut. Thousands of potholes filled. Nearly £500,000 extra in the reserves. We've kept weekly bin collections, and we've brought non-essential budgets that overspend year on year back on budget. Those are some of the positive headlines from last year, but again, on day one I said it would be part of an open and honest administration, and as such I'll highlight just some, and it is just some, of the things that we've not managed to do. We haven't cleaned every street to the high standard of some of our town centres. Every pothole hasn't been filled, and every green space isn't perfect. But again, I made that clear on day one. That wouldn't happen. 6 years of neglect cannot be fixed overnight. We also need residents to do their bit to help. And do you know what? They've come out in their droves and they're doing it, either individually or collectively. Something that's got to be congratulated by all 49 members in this chamber. Some of the play equipment in our parks is damaged beyond repair and hasn't been replaced. This is going to be addressed in our capital programme I'll come to later. One of my biggest bugbears, spend on non-permanent staff hasn't decreased as much as I would like. Indeed, in areas it has increased. Some of this is for the clean it, cut it, fill it, but I'm sorry, we still have a long way to go on this. I haven't managed to decrease the cost of the Thameside complex, or indeed get the theatre to break even. However, I know Councillor Hall has some very good news on the Grange Waters, traditionally another taxpayer's expense that has cost them dearly year on year, with money being thrown at it, never to break even. But I'm sure members across the chamber are going to highlight others, and I'm not going to stay here and denounce. If we haven't managed to do it yet, we will be managing to do it in the next few years, assuming that we keep administration. This administration has started the transition from a budget that year on year has been cut, combined, added to, deleted from and fudged about without actually any real change. The budget that we're about to move into will start to reflect better where the money is properly allocated to. Where instead of looking inward and salami slicing frontline and support services to the bone, we're looking outwards to commercialise. We're looking outwards to commercialise on what we do well. What we haven't done before, but can do so at a profit. I know that's a word that many do not like, but profit is what it is. Better utilise our staff, our assets and our buildings. Make prudential investments that bring returns that we can spend on frontline services. And as we move forward, we will be examining every service that we provide, analyse it to see whether we need to provide it, how we can provide it more efficiently, and if it can be traded commercially, not only to local government, but also to other organisations. This will help achieve the goal of our zero-based budget, something that we've banged on for year and year, that we can build on. But it also supplies services that residents want, need, and in many cases, rely on. So to the detail. We're looking for an agreement for a council tax increase of 1.98%, a 3% increase in adult social care precepts, also not only a capital programme to be agreed, but a future and aspirational list which highlights what we're aspiring to achieve, as well as the dreaded budget envelopes. The 1.9 council tax percent increase, coupled with achievable income targets, an increase in Band D equivalent properties in the council tax base, and previously agreed reductions will help us deliver, as examples, £1 million increase in the Environment Department to continue clean it, cut it, and indeed in transport fill it. Another 420,000 in reserves. £1.3 million investment in play equipment for our parks over 3 years. An £8.75 million extra for new refuse and environmental support vehicles, ensuring that bin collections remain weekly and we can get on with clean it and cut it. Up to £2.6 million redeveloping the civic amenity site, the council tip, to make it easier for both residents and hopefully the trade to properly dispose of waste rather than fly-tipping it and making our borough look a shambles in places. Examples on the future and aspirational list: smart bins that will help reduce the number of times we need to be emptied by emailing the council when they're nearly full. That saves a person going around and emptying half-empty bins or three-quarter empty bins with waiting to add full. Improving black shots filled by the removal of buildings that are no longer fit for purpose and improving the car park. And of course money for the replacement theatre, something I hope that we will all agree in Councillor Kent's motion later on this evening. I know I will be agreeing it. Why are these and others not on the confirmed capital list? It's simple. We know we need them, but I for one will not commit a figure for a project until it's fully scoped. The smart bins, for instance, we will use our free trial to assess how well they do in different areas to help shape up the further implementation across the borough. Putting projects on the capital programme that just don't happen, or worse, legally can't happen, sets expectations too high and then demoralises residents when they're not delivered. That is why we still have some 70 million of unstarted or part-finished capital schemes from previous budgets that will need financing in the future. Now to the bit that annoys me most, the envelope setting. I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. I do not believe setting a budget envelope is setting a budget. A budget is not just a vague amount on a heading for a department, it's about outlining what you will be delivering for that amount. However, legislation and case law is very clear. Only the Cabinet and as the Executive have the power to decide exactly where the money is spent, so I'll only draw members' attention to the budget envelopes as outlined on page 82 at 4.6. Well, the reasons I don't like the budget envelopes, they don't tell you what we're doing. It doesn't tell you that we're going to be keeping weekly bin collections, that legal services are looking to become a traded service, that we'll be reaching out to more parents by reorganising the children's centres, and be supplying area-based assistance to our most vulnerable. These are just examples. So you can see my frustration how this flies in the face of being open and transparent. Many of you will know, those that take the time to look back at previous years, as I did, on tables, it appears that we have a £7 million reduction in the environment team. I've challenged officers on this, but have been assured, and can assure everyone, this is solely to do with accountancy recharge issues. It does not express any reduction in spending power in environment, only in the location where the money is originally allocated before transfer. Now, I mentioned that non-permanent staff spend has not come down anywhere near as low as I would like. So, as a further example of how we're transforming the way taxpayers' money is spent, this budget where we have set reduced spend limits, we are removing the money from the budget in advance so it cannot be spent. Something that sounds so obvious, but it's just not been done in the past. If money's not there, you can't spend it. Moving away from central spend, we're also spending a dedicated school grant. £7 million on capital for improving our schools, and over 98% of the £112.5 million dedicated school grant is going directly to schools to make sure they can supply the good and better services that our children naturally deserve to thrive in the adult world. So in closing, I'm going to present you a number of things this budget paper puts forward. I've already demonstrated that instead of spending time bemoaning that the government isn't giving councils enough money, that working out how best to spend taxpayers' money and what we've got, and by challenging why and how it is spent, that not only can you supply the services that residents want, you can close the year with more money in the reserves. And next year, the small surplus. I've shown that the administration is committed to supplying services residents want, like street cleaning, pothole filling, weekly bin collections, but also those services that are hidden, those that only a few will receive. That putting high quality bids and working closely with our MPs whilst applying for grants from growth bids for regeneration, advance the local capital can come forward to improve infrastructure that's long overdue in Thurrock, as I mentioned in my opening remarks this evening. That commerciality and making profit to plough back into services are no longer dirty words. That we are determined to review every service, drive out every efficiency and commercial possibility to protect residents' services on the front line. And most importantly, for a modest increase, we will see a significant investment in services everybody in the borough uses. Significant investment in our open spaces, significant investment in the equipment and infrastructure that help us deliver our promises. This is an open and transparent, no hidden cuts in the background, formed with input from members across the chamber who attend the council's spending review budget. That's a budget that works for all. I know I've done this before, but I am going to say it again, and I will name names. I'm going to thank Councillor Snell, Councillor Jones and Councillor Duffy for attending the meetings at the council spending review, and hope they'll do so again in the next financial year. Your input and your ideas proposed have been included in the savings targets we have set, and I thank you for that input. In closing, I will mention the funding to the Citizens Advice Bureau. With the budget that's put in front of us, 44,000 underspent at the end of the year, along with some other unspent funding, we will be able to fund the Citizens Advice Bureau once more. A cut that would have affected so many in need of help, reversed by good money management. I therefore put this budget to the chamber.
Councillor Snell, you have 15 minutes to reply to the leader speech.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I apologise in advance if I repeat something that Councillor Beggar has already said, in order to make it easier for Democratic Services to keep up with what I'm saying. I had to produce my speech in advance, so that I haven't got to write as quick as I might otherwise have to. As has been pointed out more than once recently and again just now, I have, as leader of the UKIP group, taken a full and active part of the budget review process. Indeed, with the council being split between three groups, with none having a clear majority, I feel it is important that each group should take part in this process so that as wide a variety of opinions and ideas as possible are aired and taken into consideration when the budget is finally set. That said, what are we asked to agree tonight? Many Thurrock residents are under the impression that we're agreeing each line of service provision, but as Councillor Geller just said, that's not the case at all. We are agreeing which services will continue and which won't. They think we're deciding what the council will continue to do and what it won't. As we in this chamber know, that's not the case. We're asked only to agree the budget envelopes. How much each department has to spend, not what they spend it on. We're asked to make a decision on the here and now, not what might happen in a few months' time, should circumstances change. Cabinet can change the spending priorities as and when it needs to, and it's an important point that residents should be aware of. Now to the substantive points. It's impossible to look at our budget in isolation. And we have to take into account the effect that government policy has on us here in Thurrock. There can be no doubt that the year-on-year reduction in the revenue support grant has had a major effect on the way we do things. We've had to become leaner as an organisation. We've had to develop a more commercial way of doing things. We've had to try to earn more of our own money, and that's what we're going to continue to try and do as time goes by, rather than just spending our council taxpayers' money all the time, which is what we tend to have done in the past. So that can only be a good thing. We have to try to do the same things we've always done, but better and with less money. Our officers are constantly challenged to come up with new, innovative ways of getting things done, and all the time under the increasing pressure of ever-shrinking budgets. The officers have been magnificent, and I thank them for the great work they've done and they continue to do. But, and there is a but, they have a limit. Support from government has been withdrawn too quickly. None of the new working practices are given any time to bed in before yet more cuts are required, stretching everything almost to breaking point. Whilst there is no doubt that local authorities were once overindulged with government funding, that isn't the case anymore. We say, in the UKIP, enough is enough. We've taken the hits up to now, but it's time for the government to stop punching. There is a crisis in adult social care as well. All of us in this chamber know it. Indeed, the Tory chair of the Health Select Committee has been telling it to anyone that will listen. Clearly, up to now, no one's been listening to her. We in Thurrock are asked to provide excellent adult social care to a rapidly growing number of people with ever-diminishing government support. This Tory government have magnanimously passed the bill on to Thurrock Council taxpayers, even though it is fully aware that even with the 3% rise in the adult social care precept and the one-off payment of approximately $657,000, there is still severe pressure on the budget. This is unjust. Through government policy, people in need of decent social care are being put at risk. The government has the power to change that, and we call on them tonight to do so. However, if we don't agree to rise tonight, the service will likely fail. We cannot allow that to happen, and we won't. Let me return to those budget envelopes. On the face of it, they appear reasonable. However, in my opinion, there is far too much reliance on expected future savings that each directorate is supposed to realise. As an example, as Councillor Gledhill just mentioned, it is budgeted that there's going to be a reduction in the cost of agency and temporary staff. Not that there might be a reduction, but there will be. It's one thing to aspire to make that saving, but quite another to actually realise it. And I do take the point on board about not providing the budget, but with push comes to shove and staff are required, what's going to give? Is it going to be a level of service or is it going to be a budget? I'm not convinced. That particular saving hasn't been realised in previous years, despite the same commitments being made. What happens when one or more of those savings targets are not met? Do we dip into reserves, or do we cut services to cover any shortfall? What happens should, for example, an already stretched environmental budget comes under pressure? Would Cabinet curtail clean it, cut it, fill it, or will it change the way the bins are collected? I'm not convinced this budget provides security or peace of mind on such matters. In any event, the budget does balance. And how do I know that? Because the Section 1.5 officer's report says it does. But it's a budget fraught with risks, as far as I can see, at a time when we can ill afford to take any. To my mind, this budget places a question mark against every service the Council provides. I could not vote in favour of it with any confidence that the service landscape at the end of the next municipal year, within reason, will be as it is now at the start. I began my speech by pointing out the Council is split three ways. We have a minority administration, and yet we're asked tonight to agree a budget set by a group that represents less than half of the wards in Thurrock. Is it really democratic to leave decisions on spending what is many millions of pounds to a minority and unrepresentative group on council? I don't think so. The minority should not be the final arbiter of council policy and spending decisions. I know this is a conversation for another day, but it's a conversation we will have, and it will be with the aim of making council more democratically accountable. There are other areas of concerns, namely Gloriana and the Thames side, but they both appear later on in the agenda, so we'll deal with those later. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gledhill, you have 10 minutes to respond to Councillor Snell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Snell, for your response and very constructive criticism. I shall do this in no particular order. I can remember standing exactly where you are, saying I have no faith in the administration to be able to deliver a budget year on year on year. Surprisingly enough, every year I was proved wrong, and I'm sure you'll be proved wrong as well. I mean that in a good sense, because if you're proved wrong, that means our residents are getting the services that they deserve. Is there risk in this? Yes. The expert on this, Section 151 officer, highlights these risks, but at the end says there is sufficient ability for us to come in on budget. I've got 8 cabinet members, I've got Section 151 officer that's got confidence in this budget. I would hope you had a little bit more confidence in it yourself. However, I can understand where you're coming from on this. It is very good to hear the things you've said, that perhaps in the past local government's been overindulged with money. It's been really strange. Ever since I've been a local government officer and indeed a councillor, year on year we've seen budgets decline. We've seen Gershon savings. We've seen savings here, we've seen savings there. Obviously, through administration, that's cuts here and cuts there. But effectively, less money in the pot. But we've rose to that, both the previous administration to a degree, and indeed us to a greater degree. If we look at the children's centres, for example, fewer buildings, better services, less money. We're looking at the area-based assistance for vulnerable adults. Again, going into a much smaller package that can be delivered, giving us a lot more flexibility within the system. So I think, if anything, reducing those priority budgets has made us sit up, focus, and start giving good value for money rather than doing the same old, something that we should never have done in the first place. But for whatever reason, we got complacent and we carried on doing it. We moaned at whatever government it was for not giving us enough. You'll notice I haven't moaned at the government for not giving us enough. I've just got on with the job, and that's what we need to do. I fully understand where you're coming from on the adult social care statement, and indeed where Councillor Kent comes from on this. However, to try and hoodwink the administration into saying that our government isn't doing enough is really poor politics. It is despicable to use those who are receiving adult social care as pawns to score political points. So to take political pressure out of this, I'm going to put forward an alternative recommendation within the recommendations outlined on page 74, and that will be recommendation 1.1.2, and the words will be exactly the same as Councillor Kent's recommendation, which is following the considerations of the Court Overview Scrutiny Committee, and the Cabinet agrees to the, which is the original one, sorry, the proposed amendment is exactly as it's written there. Thurrock Council believes that the adult social care precept is unable, I assume that is to solve the adult social care funding crisis that exists not only here in Thurrock but nationally. Council calls on central government to urgently put in place proper and sustainable funding for adult social care and put in place a long-term strategy to deal with the increased pressure. This will mean that every member can vote for the 3% without having to think politics. They can get on and think people, and that's what we should be thinking about, people. And then on 1.2.1, as I've just proposed, certainly this group's got a free vote. I'm sure the other groups will probably have a free vote on that as well, and it'll be up to members to decide whether this council will write to government accordingly. As such, Madam Mayor, I'll pass it to you.
Right, we have an amendment to recommendation 1.2 on the agenda. Councillor Kent, it's in front of you. So, Councillor Kent, you've got 3 minutes to speak to your amendment.
Madam Mayor, if I may, I believe the council has accepted the amendment. So is that not right?
Accepted it, but as a separate recommendation, it's 1.2.1. So it would not be 1.2 as written there, but 1.2, then 1.2.1.
And I'm happy to accept that as an addition and withdraw the amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Kent.
Bear with me now, it's got to work out. members that wish to speak. I've got two councillors who've signalled. Councillor Jones is first, and then Councillor Duff. Councillor Kent, sorry.
Madam Mayor, I think I want to talk about three things in this budget. I think, first of all, this is the 23rd budget here at Thurrock Council that I've had to vote on. For the last 6 years, been involved pretty intimately with setting the budget, and I know that it isn't easy. And frankly, I've enjoyed not having the responsibility of having to grapple with some of these issues. I'll start with Councillor Gledhill's dreaded budget envelopes. I don't like the dreaded budget envelopes. And Councillor Gledhill can talk all he wants about accounting niceties, but the fact is that the Environment and Place Directorate, they are the people who cut it and fill it and clean it. They're also the people who plan for it and build it and dispose of it. Will have £6.6 million less to spend this next year than this. And there is nothing in these papers before us this evening that tells us where that money has gone or how that funding shortfall would be made up. The second is adult social care. Madam Mayor, whether we accept it or not, whether we like it or not, there is an adult social care crisis up and down the country, not only here in Thurrock. It's not peculiar to Thurrock. But what we do know is last month, this meeting received a report that told us that there is an £18 to £22 million deficit in adult social care spending in Thurrock over the next 3 years. And what we have before us this evening from the administration is an acceptance that we should take the 3% precept, which I agree with, and that we should accept the one-off, and it is a one-off, government adult social care support grant of £670,000. That gives us something in the region of £2.4 million extra for adult social care against a deficit that we accepted last month of up to £22 million. If we take the full extra precept next year, and that gives us, I don't know, another £2 million, that's £4 million off of that deficit of potentially £22 million. And the only other place we're going to get to reach that £22 million deficit is cuts to other services, because there will be no further adult social care precept. I have to say, Madam Mayor, that I don't think that's good enough. I think that our old and vulnerable residents deserve better, and I think we can do better for them. But we can't do that if we accept the budget envelopes as set out tonight. We know that we have more people than ever in Thurrock residents stuck in hospital because we don't have care packages, we don't have adaptations, we don't have places in care homes to allow them to come out of hospital. And that's because we don't have the funding to do it, and we shouldn't be accepting it if we can do better. Finally, I have to say, Councillor Gledhill said commercialisation is no longer a dirty word. It never was a dirty word. I have to remind him that it's us that rescheduled debt to release funding to rebuild reserves. It was us that invested with CCLA to make large returns that have helped year in, year out. But I have to say that if you look at the table of savings that Councillor Snell alluded to, too many of them are aspirational. You know, £1 million income generation target, fantastic. I'd love to think we're going to make £1 million. Asset rationalisation, £800,000. Again, I really hope that happens. Efficiencies and transformation, £1.5 million. £1.5 million. You know, I think it's quite reasonable to have an aspect, a portion of the budget that is in that way aspirational. But to have roughly half the savings that are before us, I read that alongside the Section 151 officers' Section 25 statement. And it does leave me in the position, and to echo Councillor Gledhill, I hope I am proved wrong, but it leaves me to believe that this budget is not robust enough. I don't think this budget is fit for purpose, and I don't think it's a budget that will be able to be delivered.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I'm going to basically talk about this as far as how residents see it. And I think the main concern residents have when it comes around to budget setting at full council is with the council tax, and will it be increased. Unfortunately, this year it looks like we have no choice but to agree with this Conservative administration proposals to increase council tax by 4.98%. And now you might call it poor politics, but this is due to the fact of their government's continued cuts to local councils over the past years. This Conservative government has cut funds to the adult social care budget to local councils over the last 7 years, causing hardship to many councils as to supply a decent service, driving some to breaking point. We in the UK are reported as being the 5th richest economy in the world, but are finding it increasingly more difficult to supply services required to look after our old and vulnerable residents. I have many elderly residents in my ward who are sick and tired of hearing that the NHS and the adult social care are in crisis because of them living longer. What a terrible way to treat our people. It's disgusting. This Conservative administration should be man enough to join forces with other Conservative councils as to condemn this government for the way they are cutting funds to local councils. I can understand cuts for efficiencies, and I've got no problem with that. But I think you're really cutting funds too sharp. If UKIP was running this country and we were having this same debate, yeah, well, you might laugh, the only reason you're in power at the moment in the administration is because you had someone go over to you. If UKIP was running this country and we were having this same debate regards cuts to local councils from the central government, I would refuse to be a member of that party. It's about time this government addressed the foreign aid budget as to redirect some of this money to the needy in this country. Now, Madam Mayor, I'd just like to add this on item 13, page 120 to 21. No, sorry, we've got that wrong. Let's get it right. No, page 103, appendix 5. This is capital spending for vehicle and plant replacements. The reason I'm mentioning this and bringing this one up because it is a biggie. It's £6.2 million for refuse vehicles. Our fleet's coming to the end of 10 years. They're 10 years old. They've had it. Now we're looking at spending a lot of money, and I've brought this up at many meetings, and I would like this to be looked at as to the difference between buying and leasing. I just see many more benefits as to lease these vehicles, because if we ever do change the format of our weekly bin collections, i.e. and these vehicles may not be up for it. And once we buy these vehicles, we've got them for 10 years. 10 years with the lease, all the maintenance and everything's all in, and we can change these vehicles if we change. I will do, Madam Mayor, thank you very much. We can change these vehicles as to the format of the weekly bin collections. If we buy them, we've got them for 10 years, there's nothing you can do about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to thank the 151 officer. Several meetings I've had with him throughout the year to discuss the budget, finance of the council, and to give me insight in my position as shadow portfolio holder for finance. When I was first elected, I was under the proviso that democracy is 50% plus one, or winning at the ballot box. But when I got here at the first full meeting, I found out that's not what democracy is. Democracy is apparently 36.7% if it works out that way. And it's bizarre that we have a council where the major financial decisions, the 50% of the vote in this chamber count for nothing. And the day after this vote's made, the Cabinet can go away and do something else. And how can that be, Council? I went to the CSR committee, and thank you for having me. But what I saw there was a backroom deal where no one really knew what was going on. The final deal was agreed by them 36.7, not for everyone to decide how the money's spent in this council. And we've heard everyone moan about budget envelopes, they don't like the way it's run. Well, how about you do something about it rather than stand there and endlessly moan? You've obviously been here long enough, you've both been in power, you've had the chance to bring change, and you've sat on your hands. So I look forward to the next council where I'll bring a motion to bring forward the committee system so we can actually have a properly elected council, and none of this backroom deals, 36.7% deciding what happens, no more budget envelopes and anything goes on. we'll actually have work together. Constantly throughout tonight I've heard that we need to work cross-party. Councillor Hebb said it more times than I can count. Well, how about we actually work cross-party rather than have rhetoric and overview and scrutiny committees that scrutinise and then get ignored? So I'll be voting against this budget, and quite frankly, why anyone would vote for a budget where they can't actually hold that budget to account a day after we walk out this meeting is beyond me. So I call and hope you support me in future moving to a committee system, because democracy should work in local government, not be some sham dictatorship that doesn't really understand anything.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wheeler. Councillor Jones, could you turn your mic on, please?
What we simply forget is all we ever do is flog the willing horses. All I keep hearing about how we're going to help the young families, hard-working families, but they're the ones who all suffer. They're the ones who are going to keep paying and paying and paying the tax increases and the council tax. Unlike a lot where I live, and I'm an elderly, I am an old age pension and fixed budget, and I do pay a lot of council tax. But there's a lot of young families where I live who pay extortionate fares to go to London, and they've got the audacity, both of them, to go to work to try and better their lives and buy their own houses. And how do we reward them? We stick more council tax. It's time we stopped flogging the willing horses, the young families, the young working families who need the money. They need it. They're the future, not us. They're the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Holden.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As we've heard from the leader tonight, and as Councillor Hebb has previously outlined, the administration's goal is about doing more for less. The budget is about how we can reform, invest and strive. We are reforming. Children's centres are going to offer a more comprehensive offer to more people. Under the ethos of fewer buildings, better services, we will make our annual saving of 1.4 million, whilst serving 0 to 19-year-olds in a comprehensive way and not just 0 to 5-year-olds in a fragmented way. And we are investing. This administration is investing in our schools. Members will be aware that we have already put aside £7 million for school capital that has already seen expansion plans come forward for the children in St Clair's and in Ockenden. Today I visited East Tilbury Primary, a wonderful school within the St Clair's cooperative and led outstandingly by the headmistress, but with a real challenge. Having almost 700 pupils in a tiny school and accommodating 4 bulge years for the council. This is when they have taken in pupils above and beyond which they needed to help deal with shortages. East Tilbury Primary has done this with very little capital support. Today I met some very happy and well-educated children, but in very, very cramped accommodation. Well, this evening I'm delighted to say that my department can make up to £1.4 million available for East Tilbury Primary immediately to help expand and deliver the classrooms that these children deserve, offering a great education to so many children, and this council has got their backs. As the Cabinet Member for Regeneration frequently says, that we need to give Tilbury some love, well, I hope that this is considered my very romantic endeavour to the people of East Tilbury. However, investment has to come with health warnings. We have only approved capital that is needed, not simply wanted. Councillor Hebb has begun increasing reserves to ensure we're risk protected. Councillor Snell referenced the danger of not achieving savings. That is why we have saved more money than we needed to, with almost £500,000 extra in reserve. And it comes the same when it comes to council debt. We've got to control council debt and ensure that borrowing meets a necessity or offers a clear return on investment. It is only balancing investment with prudence that we can be a borough that moves from survive to thrive. And we are striving. Key to the budget, to what Councillor Hebb has outlined in the CSR, is financial control. Let me give you one example. Grange Waters lost us £330,000 in 2014-2015 alone. Now it breaks even. Next year it's going to turn a profit. That is what happens when, instead of looking at the graph of doom, you look at principles like sound commercial thinking in the CSR. That's what happens when you work instead of whinge. We will continue with commerciality in the skills service, and in fact the money that is available will see me in March launch a small spark scheme supporting small charitable groups working in schools to help children. For example, extra pastoral teams in schools like Hattonbrook to support some of our most troubled young people.
Councillor Holden, can you sum up, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Of course, the budget is not just about having a massive budget to do things. The GP standards plan to drive forward health improvements only has limited staff and resources dedicated. But by uniting, challenging and leading our partners, it will have a massive impact as we strengthen the primary care network, which will take the burden of small sums of money.
If we do nothing, our sporting fertility and many of our youngsters in Thurrock will lose the chance to succeed. We need as administration to be visionary for the future of sport and look forward. Thank you.
Councillor Gerard Rice.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, of course, I do have a memory. And I can remember picking up the pieces from the last Conservative administration when they left us reserves at just over £2 million. And it is pleasing to hear tonight you're going to add to the reserves. That's very good. And I think in your vision, although we're not directly responsible, I do hope that through your good offices, through the members of Parliament, you're able to save the remains of Alsip Hospital, because that's important to our citizens. And of course, then we touch on to the, this lovely subject about social care. It's interesting, the leader of Hillingdon Council, he's not Labour, he's not UKIP, he's Conservative. He tells the government to once and for all propose the social care tax. That's what your own Conservative people are telling you. Now, you have a choice. You can keep on pushing it down on the local people, and when we look at the bands, I suppose band D, what are people going to be paying now? About just shy of $12.50 a year. That's a lot of money. You can't run away from it. And of course, you know, one can't help say, on the environment, I'm glad you've given the commitment tonight for weekly bin collections. I really am glad about that, because there is a lot of concern out there that you were about to introduce a tax on the brown bins of £40 a year. And I'm glad that's nowhere in your budget. Because when I was the Environment Cabinet Member for the Environment, the officers came to me with that. I said, just go away. I'm not going to introduce it. And I'm glad you've actually knocked it back as well. I think that's very positive. And at the end of the day, I do hope that you listen to the public gallery tonight on another subject, because you will get a stick. And all I will say to you in finalising is this. You cannot keep adding this 3%, and I bet next year your government will come back and say, oh, we've had a look at it, we'll give you the authority to put it up another 3%, the social care charge, and it will go on year by year. And what will happen is these hard-working families in Thurrock will bear this brunt, when I believe honestly it should be direct taxation. That's your decision because you're in government, but at least I'm allowed in a democracy still to express my opinions, just like Dennis Skinner does.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sheridan. Thank you, Lady Mill. Tonight I've been sitting here watching the Conservatives out there, very jolly and very happy. So I'd just like to make note, and I'd like it noted that I've been very sad and very angry that I've had to agree to a tax increase on the local people, just to enable this council to continue to run. And this is all due to the cuts from the Conservative government, who have spent £1 billion so far on foreign aid. So I don't know why you're so happy. You should be helping the locals first. Thank you, Councillor Hewlin.
to learn from the mistakes and keep looking forward, making sure we spend the money wisely by working smarter. Part of my responsibility is to measure council performance, reporting it in a clear, open and honest manner, warts and all, so that residents can see what's going on. We have ambitious targets that we don't always meet, but the important thing is to ensure we continually improve, because Thurrock's residents deserve the best their money can buy. This administration did the resident survey to provide the information directors, officers so desperately needed, and guess what? We also listened to the voice of this borough. Residents said we want cleaner streets, tidier parks, repaired roads and weekly bin collections, and we've delivered exactly what they asked for. By working smarter and more efficiently from fewer buildings, we can fund direct funds to services helping more people, not less. Councillor Lydia once said in our own scrutiny meetings, we shouldn't be counting paper clips, but I disagree. We have to stop wasted spend. Reducing the stationery bills, stop leaving the heating blasting at a sweltering 30 degrees in empty rooms. This is how we save tens of thousands of pounds. This may not seem a lot in the scheme of council spending, but for some voluntary organisations it's a difference between us helping them to stay open and having to close. We owe it to residents to spend every single penny wisely. And I know how diligently directors, cabinet members, officers and particularly Councillor Head have worked to find the money to improve services, keep balanced books and still not bankrupt us. So I'll be wholeheartedly supporting their budget. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cockshaw.
Yes, I'm talking about assets really. And the asset team is a really important team of one. Yeah, it's very small. And then you talk about, Councillor Kemp mentioned about £800,000 savings. Looking at the asset team, there's the assets of £61 million in the last budget of disposable income. What we need to do is actually get that money. Most of that is in per fleet, I understand. But with that is put out. So 800,000 doesn't seem an unreasonable figure to find in next year's. But we need to deliver a disposal scheme that actually works. The 61 million in the previous administration's budget is a lot of money of disposable assets. So we need to start working on that. And as for the foreign aid, look, I'm sitting here as a Conservative, and I'm proud this Conservative government's got a foreign aid budget that makes sure that violence and sexual violence in Nigeria is stopped in girls. I'm proud to make sure that the refugees and children in Lebanon are looked after and made sure they've got a safe environment to educate. I'm proud of the Greek democracy that's been risen in Bosnia and Serbia that was in violence and killing people, killing young boys. 8,000 boys were killed in Bosnia not more than 20 years ago. And I'm proud we're spending money there, and just because it's wrong and everyone else in the public will go on fire for this, and if we bring back hanging on that, but I'm proud that this government and with the coalition and the Labour Party as well have all agreed, while one person in the government does not, whether UKIP MP, don't agree with it, but we should keep it, we should make sure that's spent, and we should spend it wisely, but we cannot afford to let people here that are not in this, not given this the greatest country in the world to live in and be born in, have got the same opportunities as us.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Nicolai.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Listening to the debate from the other party, it seems very much we're talking about, we're setting the Thurrock budget tonight with money that Thurrock is raising. Talking about government cuts, we're not going to change anything tomorrow, we're not going to get extra money from the government tomorrow because we don't like what they're doing at the moment. And I think that's just money in the water. We need to work with the money we can get now. We talk about risk. We need to make sure that the money that we spend is the money that we earn. I know there's been cuts over the years, but it has increased the way that we deliver services and to the better. Because if them cuts hadn't been there, we probably wouldn't have local area coordinators, which in actual fact do a fantastic job in Thurrock. We lead the way in some instances of those, and that's saving social care an inordinate amount of money by stopping people getting to the stage where they need social care. It's made people think more imaginatively. We've now got social prescribing, which again is taking a big load off doctor surgeries and the drain on adult social care resources. So yes, it does make you think how better can we run the services, what we can do in a better way and not just keep using the same money to do the same old things and get the same old results. This budget we've increased to the maximum we can, but on the whole the previous administration attempted to increase to the maximum they could virtually all the time they were in office. The only difference is we're not proposing cuts. There's been a lot said about the social care and the adult social care budget. In 2015, there was a proposal from the previous administration to cut 1.9 million over 3 years for the voluntary sector, the sector that supports elderly people, people that are in adult social care, people with disabilities. So to now start saying that we're not supporting that when we've actually brought a budget in using the money that we're allowed to use and bring it in without affecting any cuts, I think that needs to be commended.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barbara Rice.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have a written speech tonight, as many of members do. So I'm going to speak from the underdog's position with the inequalities that we still have in Thurrock. That we haven't heard anything said tonight about in the budget, about how we're going to address that. The adult social care that we've talked a lot about is something, Madam Mayor, that is an absolute disaster in Thurrock at the moment. We have got many, many people that are waiting for packages of care, fact, in Thurrock. And this is either leaving them languishing in hospital, and indeed when they come out, they're coming out and their mobility is so deteriorated that they're taking months and months to learn to walk again, if indeed they can. There are absolutely devastating effects, and it's not just about laughing and joking about money and talking about foreign aid, and we all have our own opinions on that. This is about our Thurrock residents. The inequalities in Thurrock continue to grow. We have some of the highest undiagnosed cancer rates in the UK, in Thurrock. Okay, we have a big problem with air quality in Thurrock that are killing our residents, literally killing our residents. I want the administration to acknowledge some of this. It's not a jolly upper budget, it's for our residents of Thurrock, people that live here. And one of our colleagues tonight said about young people in Thurrock. Well, let me tell you, one of my elderly residents, and I have the letter, and I'm going to tell you, just briefly, sent me a letter to say she's 77 years of age, and if the £15 a week goes ahead, and if the £5, excuse me, I'm speaking, and if the money for the council tax goes ahead, she is going to get a job at age 77 because all her money's accounted for, even though the government tell her she has enough money to pay. So let's look at real life issues in Thurrock and start to think about the underprivileged and people that are really struggling, and it's a big proportion of people in Thurrock, and I don't think that this budget does anything to help those people. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll keep this brief because I think the time is going quickly. I echo Angela Sheridan's comments regarding people being disgusted where money is allocated. I was only speaking to a young lady of 83 this afternoon, whereby she cannot understand where money that she needs to fulfil her quality of life is going elsewhere. And with Councillor Coxall, unfortunately, yes, I would be very proud to send money abroad if it was mine, but unfortunately, we seem to forget that it's not particularly difficult to shovel someone else's money elsewhere that it's not particularly yours. It's when it has to come out of your own pocket personally, then it causes well, then I would be proud if it was my money. Thank you. But basically, when it talks about foreign aid, unfortunately, it does get a bit annoying when, well, you don't get the results when it goes abroad. And I think, again, it should be really thorough. That should be benefiting. Now, it is a permanent policy, so I say you're on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too, like Councillor White, wasn't going to speak tonight, so therefore I haven't prepared a speech. But I can assure you, with the adult social care, I have actually looked at the service. I've been out and spoken to residents, looked at what we need to try and devise is what they want, not what we presume they want. And I never find any elderly person wishing ever to go in a home. No. It's fact. They never say, oh, councillor, I'd like to go in a home. Very few ever want to be like that. Therefore, we have to look at stopping them needing to go into a home. What we need to do is help them. Now, we have Collins House, for instance. It's been lingering there for God knows how long. I'm sure other councillors have been there, where they haven't even got ensuite bathrooms, they've got asbestos. It is such an unused type of asset, if you like. We are planning to go and move forward. I've pressed officers to keep pushing forward that we produce 30 new bedrooms on Collins House with ensuite bedrooms and bring it up to date, so that we have the step down from the hospital. Now, regarding why people get ill in the first place, yes, we have air quality issues, but a lot of the air quality issues are to do with the fact of imported air. I found out, you know, because we are surrounded by other boroughs, and obviously diesel lorries, etc., idling within the borough. But also, when I began looking at some of the cases, and I went across why some of the people were actually needing care, it was respiratory disorders, as the council had said, but a lot of that was actually due to smoking when they were younger, in their 20s, you know, 15s, when they were kids, or having second-hand smoke. Now, the other thing that we've brought forward, and I'm very proud about it, is the shared lives. I've always been a champion for shared lives, and in fact I have a brilliant example of it in my own ward. We hope to have shared lives now, have actually employed some staff, they're down in Tilbury, they're getting the manager in, and we are looking at how people can share their lives. If people want to foster children, you can in a way foster an older person or a younger adult. We have the LACs, they are absolutely brilliant. They actually intervene before people actually get to that point where they need more help. Now, regarding the actual care packages, etc., I took it upon myself to follow some of the carers around the actual borough. And I found actually one of them that was in Chadwell. Her first appointment was over in South Ockenden. Now, they're lip-whacking all over, dilly-dallying all over the actual borough, crisscrossing it here, there and everywhere.
Councillor, can you stop for someone, please?
Yeah. Thank you. We are going out to tender for new care packages. We are going to put them into zones. We are going to make them more workable. You know, there's a lot of work being done on it, and I don't want residents having to go to bed at 5 o'clock in the afternoon before Coronation Street, or having to get up at 6 a.m. in the morning. We actually want proper care, but what they don't want is to actually have care. Thank you.
Councillor Garish.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The administration before this budget promised us clean it, cut it, fill it. But going through the summary of the budget proposals presented tonight, this is clearly the wing it budget, dodge it budget. I'm concerned about the budget for 3 key reasons. Firstly, there are too many savings proposals that are too speculative. Secondly, proposals are too vague on individual service impacts, and I don't mean what's in the budget paper tonight, I mean the detailed income and savings proposals that have been presented previously. Finally, too many of the big issues for the future have been ducked in the course of this budget. Madam Mayor, we on this side of the chamber have never seen so little clarity in a budget on the day that it should be set. The assumptions that bring together these proposals are hugely speculative. Councillor Kent named a few earlier, and I'll add further to that list. The administration hopes to find £110,000 savings in ICT procurement. No details, just an expectation.
The administration hopes to find 100,000 through contract management changes. No details given. The administration hopes to find 100,000 from the reduction of staff sickness. Good if you can do it, but that is a big ask. The administration hopes to find £80,000 from libraries. Again, no details, but an expectation of savings from forthcoming review. Now, I think we'd all agree that occasionally a speculative proposal will need to go into the budget on a best estimate basis. But when the budget is stuffed with these uncertainties, that should give us serious cause for thought on the credibility of the overall budget. It also means that we cannot be sure of the ultimate impact on services from agreeing this budget tonight. What other stings might be hidden away in the budget? Last year, the Children's Overview and Scrutiny Committee was presented with a proposed review of children's centres, only to find out later that this meant closures, even though not a single mention of that was made in the report to ONS. I fear tonight we're being asked to sign another blank cheque. What other service cuts might emerge from the shadows next year? I'm not confident that the proposals deliver a balanced budget. There is too much uncertainty, too much speculation. We cannot find ourselves midway through a year and are unable to meet our plans. Finally, Madam Mayor, on the subject of the adult social care precept, the proposed rise is the only option currently available to the Council and will help adult social care a little. However, the rise will not cover the full scale of the crisis in the longer term, nor do I think it's right that government is avoiding its responsibility by pushing this cost onto councils and council taxpayers. I agree strongly with Councillor Kent's amendment that the issue should no longer be dodged. Government must be made to grasp the nettle and implement a real long-term solution. So, Madam Mayor, the Conservatives are winging their key assumptions, fudging the service impacts and dodging the big questions. This is the wing it budget. Dodge it.
Thank
So
you,
close, Ollie.
Councillor Person.
So close. Tragic.
Thank you very much. It's quite hard to follow that when I haven't got a catchphrase. I do apologise. What I will say is I haven't been setting budgets for as long as Councillor Kent, but I have been involved in setting budgets for the last 12 years. And for the last 12 years, I found every meeting at this time of year extremely difficult, because what we are doing is we're working for our residents, for the best of our residents, to achieve the best for our residents. Nearly a catchphrase, I'll work on that one. I'm really pleased that within my portfolio I get to work with so many volunteers. And each time I go, I find that more people do want to volunteer because they want to have a better Thurrock. And working together, we can get a better Thurrock. This administration is seriously looking at the plans for new provision of the theatre. We don't want to stand still. We don't want to look backwards, as some of my colleagues have said. We want to look forward. We want better sports equipment, which is why we put money there. We want better sports buildings, which Councillor Redsall has already mentioned. I do understand there will always be pressures, and things will always change. As Councillor Snell said, what happens if? But what happens if your boiler breaks down at home? Do you say, oh my God, we're going to be cold forever? No, you don't. What you do is you actually take stock of where you are and you move forward positively with a new boiler. And this administration is planning for the future. We want to drive things forward, and we will drive things forward. I'm absolutely thrilled that we have found the money from underspend to support CAB. We've recognised that many vulnerable people approach the CAB for assistance, and we want to be able to help them. So this administration is looking out for vulnerable people, and I'm really proud of the work that has gone on with this administration in putting forward this budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Watkins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Some interesting comments coming out tonight, and perhaps people might be able to read their speeches and learn them beforehand before watching them. I just would like to make a point out, actually, that under this Conservative administration, we've seen leaps and bounds improvements going forward already this year with the environment. What residents asking for at the doors of elections in 2016 to see improvements with the borough, clean it, cut it, and fill it. And you know what? That's what we've done, and that's what we're continuing to do. What the budget here is actually doing is about working for more for less, and there's nothing wrong with doing that at all. And I'm very proud of this budget.
The CSR was designed
to get everyone round the table and create a cross-party, palatable budget for the 22nd of February 2017. There were 10 meetings held. There were 10 Conservative members at that time. UKIP had 7 members through the exercise. Labour had 2. All groups saw the text and the papers which were presented because they were sent 3 days in advance. So everyone had the ability to be informed and contribute. And when I say everyone, I mean the group leaders and the deputies. So if there are members in here that have no idea what we're talking about, perhaps they need to look at the communications flow between their leadership and their backbenchers. So, Madam Mayor, I just want to address a few points that have been raised. One regarding government cuts from the leader of the UKIP group. Councillor Snow, you know full well that the plan is a full suite of service reviews which will look bottom up, not top down, from the next 3 years. We have no idea how much we're spending on everything and whether that's necessary. We need to look at what's statutory, what's preferable to the taxpayer, and we need to get the right base. It's an exercise this council hasn't undertaken, and we're going to do it. The deputy leader of UKIP implores everyone to note that it's the Conservative administration which led on a 3.99% increase. That is not true. The CSR was a discussion and a negotiation. And I can put hand on heart and avidly say it was not me or my leader which proposed a 3.99% increase. However, consensual politics, Madam Mayor. Here we are with the recommendations. We talk about the hammering of the general fund. Madam Mayor, business rates has gone up massively in terms of our income over the last 6 years. You know, we talk about the national debt like we weren't anywhere near becoming what Greece become. There is no graph of doom. Our plan in Thurrock is very simple. Get your reserves sorted. Done. Get the budget settled. Hopefully done tonight. Look at the service reviews. Understand what we need to spend on what. Then we know how much council tax we should be raising by. But not one of us in this chamber has ever completed that exercise, and we are going to do it under Conservative leadership. My shallow portfolio talks about the usefulness of the CSR, and that's a bit of a shame because myself and Councillor Pedder privately and publicly commented your contributions that time, but I'm afraid that's a facet of the way you behave. Councillor Rice, the answer to the question is 70% of people will see an increase of less than £1, which is the same price as a pint of milk to fund 3% social care.
Can you sum up now, please?
I can, Madam Mayor. There's one thing I think we just need to land on, and that's this fallacy that this budget is full of notional savings. Let me be very clear. When we walked into this administration, we inherited a 4.1 million shortfall in the 2016-17 budget. And furthermore, the only reason the environment budget appears as though it's been under is because through our financial due diligence, we've identified nearly 7 or 6 million of double bookkeeping. The money was never there in the first place. So please don't lecture the Conservatives on financial prudence. The record is shot to pieces over there.
Councillor Tolson.
Like yours was in 2007.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'm not going to duplicate what the Leader of the Council said. The environmental capital bids are before us, and if you've read it and you're interested, they are there before you. But compared to where we were last summer, when the grass wasn't cut and there was litter all in our streets, now it's just so much more improved. And people are coming up to us and saying how much more improved it is. So in capital bids tonight, there are environmental enforcements and enhancements there. Executive, I'm just going to explain exactly what we need to do so everyone knows what they're voting on.
Sorry, before we do, I'm fairly sure that I'll get to the ability to sum up before we move to vote. If you'd like to point to your scripts, it's page 12.
Councillor, sorry, I've just had clarification from officers that you don't have the, you don't sum up on this item, and we're going straight to the vote. Councillor, so just to reiterate, you already summed up after Councillor Snell spoke, and as the amendment was withdrawn, we're going to the vote, and Chief Exec is now going to explain how the voting is going to work.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's proposed that we undertake the vote tonight as follows. First, you will vote on recommendation 1.1. This will not be recorded unless members indicate otherwise. The vote will then undertake an individual recorded vote on recommendations 1.2, 1.2.1, which is the new altered recommendation, 1.3 and 1.4. The vote will then take recommendations 1.5 to 1.7 en bloc, and this will not be recorded unless members indicate otherwise. And finally, you will vote on recommendations 1.8 to 1.13 en bloc, and this will be recorded. And if it's helpful, Madam Mayor, we can reiterate that at each stage of the voting.
Thank you. Right, members, if we go to page 74 of the agenda, it's where the recommendations are. Recommendation 1.1. So this, all those in favour of recommendation 1.1, please raise your hands. Thank you. All those against, please raise your hands. And any abstentions, please raise your hands. Thank you. That's agreed. Right, we're now going to go to recommendation 1.2. This is a recorded vote, so I'll hand over to Democratic Services.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When I call your name, Councillor, if you can say whether you're for, against or abstain for recommendation 1.2. Councillor Anger.
For.
Councillor Allen.
For.
Councillor Chris Baker. For. Councillor James Baker.
For.
Councillor Jan Baker.
For.
Councillor Churchman. For. Councillor Collins.
For.
Councillor Cockshaw.
For.
Councillor Duffin.
For.
Councillor Fish.
For.
Councillor Gamester.
For.
Councillor Gerrish.
For.
Councillor Gledhill.
For.
Councillor Haig. For. Councillor Howden.
For.
Councillor Harrington.
For.
Councillor Head.
For.
Councillor Victoria Holloway.
For.
Councillor Hoolan.
For.
Councillor Jones.
For.
Councillor Kelly.
For.
Councillor Cathy Kent.
For.
Councillor John Kent.
For.
Councillor Kerrin.
For.
Councillor Lydiard.
For.
Councillor Brian Little.
For.
Councillor Sue Little.
For.
Councillor McPherson.
For.
Councillor Maney.
For.
Councillor Roger Taylor.
For.
Councillor Canade.
For.
Councillor Piccolo.
For.
Councillor Pothecary.
For.
Councillor Potter.
For.
Councillor Redsell.
For.
Councillor Barber Rice.
For.
Councillor Gerard Rice.
For.
Councillor Salmons.
For.
Councillor Sheridan.
For.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Snell.
For.
Councillor Stone.
For.
Councillor Thompson.
For.
Councillor Watkins. For. And Councillor Wheeler. For.
.2 is agreed. Members, in view of the time, I need to draw your attention to move a motion to suspend Council Procedure Rule 11.1 to allow the meeting to continue beyond the 2.5-hour time limit.
Great.
Do we want to wait to a certain time or to...
9:30, Madam Mayor.
Yeah,
9:30.
I second Gerard's motion. 9:31.
can I suggest 9:45?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you, councillors. Right. We'll go on to the next recommendation, which is recommendation 1.2.1, which was originally the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Councillor Aker.
4.
Councillor Allen.
4.
Councillor Chris Baker.
4.
Councillor James Baker.
4.
Councillor Jan Baker.
4.
Councillor Churchman. Against. Councillor Collins.
Against.
Councillor Cockshall.
Against.
Councillor Duffin.
4.
Councillor Fish.
4.
Councillor Gamester.
4.
Councillor Gerrish.
4.
Councillor Gledhill.
Against.
Councillor Haig.
Against.
Councillor Howden.
Against.
Councillor Hamilton.
4.
Councillor Hebb.
Against.
Councillor Victoria Holloway.
4.
Councillor Hewlin.
Against.
Councillor Jones.
4.
Councillor Kelly.
Against.
Councillor Kathy Kent.
4.
Councillor John Kent.
4.
Councillor Kerrin.
4.
Councillor Lydiard.
4.
Councillor Brian Little.
Against.
Councillor Sue Little.
Against.
Councillor McPherson.
Against.
Councillor Maney.
Against.
Councillor Roger Toner.
Against.
Councillor Okanade.
4.
Councillor Piccolo.
Against.
Councillor Apothecary.
4.
Councillor Potter.
4.
Councillor Redsell.
Against.
Councillor Barbara Rice.
4.
Councillor Gerard Rice.
4.
Councillor Salmons.
4.
Councillor Sheridan.
4.
Councillor Smith.
4.
Councillor Snell.
4.
Councillor Stone.
4.
Councillor Thompson.
Against.
Councillor Watkins.
Against.
Councillor Wheeler.
4.
That was carried 427 against 18. We now move to recommendation 1.3.
Okay. Councillor Aker.
Abstain.
Councillor Allen.
4.
Councillor Chris Baker. Against. Councillor James Baker.
4.
Councillor Jan Baker.
4.
Councillor Churchman. 4. Councillor Collins.
4.
Councillor Cockshall.
4.
Councillor Councillor Duffin.
Abstain.
Councillor Fish.
4.
Councillor Gamester.
4.
Councillor Gerrish.
4.
Councillor Gledhill.
4.
Councillor Haig. 4. Councillor Howden.
4.
Councillor Hamilton.
4.
Councillor Hebb.
4.
Councillor Victoria Holloway.
4.
Councillor Hewlin.
4.
Councillor Jones.
4.
Councillor Kelly.
4.
Councillor Kathy Kent.
4.
Councillor John Kent.
4.
Councillor Kerrin.
4.
Councillor Lydiard.
4.
Councillor Brian Little.
4.
Councillor Sue Little.
4.
Councillor McPherson.
4.
Councillor Maney.
4.
Councillor Chitona.
4.
Councillor Canade.
4.
Councillor Piccolo.
4.
Councillor Apothecary.
4.
Councillor Potter.
4.
Councillor Redsell.
4.
Councillor Barbara Rice.
4.
Councillor Gerard Rice.
4.
Councillor Salmons.
4.
Councillor Sheridan.
4.
Councillor Smith.
4.
Councillor Snell.
4.
Councillor Stone.
4.
Councillor Tolson.
4.
Councillor Watkins.
4.
Councillor Wheeler.
Against.
For 41 against 2 and abstentions 2. So that was agreed. We go on 1.4, please.
Councillor Aker.
Against.
Councillor Allen.
Against.
Councillor Chris Baker.
Against.
Councillor James Baker.
Against.
Councillor Jan Baker.
Against.
Councillor Churchman. For. Councillor Collins.
For.
Councillor Cockshaw.
For.
Councillor Duffin.
Against.
Councillor Fish.
Against.
Councillor Gamester.
Against.
Councillor Gerrish.
Against.
Councillor Gledhill. For. Councillor Haig. For. Councillor Howden. For. Councillor Hamilton.
Against.
Councillor Head.
For.
Councillor Holloway.
Against.
Councillor Hewlin.
For.
Councillor Jones.
Against.
Councillor Kelly.
For.
Councillor Cathy Kent.
Against.
Councillor John Kent.
Against.
Councillor Kerry.
Against.
Councillor Lydiard.
Against.
Councillor Brian Little.
For.
Councillor Sue Little.
For.
Councillor McPherson.
For.
Councillor Maney.
For.
Councillor Ochitola.
For.
Councillor Okanade.
Against.
Councillor Piccolo.
For.
Councillor Potterberry.
Against.
Councillor Potter.
Against.
Councillor Redsell.
For.
Councillor Barbara Rice.
Against.
Councillor Gerard Rice.
Against.
Councillor Salmons.
Against.
Councillor Sheridan.
Against.
Councillor Smith.
Against.
Councillor Snell.
Against.
Councillor Stone.
Against.
Councillor Tolson.
For.
Councillor Watkins.
For.
Councillor Wheeler.
Against.
Members, the results are for 18, against 27. The motion's been lost. I've now been advised that we need to adjourn the meeting and the three leaders need to leave the room with the Director of Finance and the Chief Executive. Members, sorry, I've just got some more votes, come back. Check your on the phone back. Do we need, can I pass over to,
Madam Mayor, it might be sensible to give a bit more leeway with the guillotine.
okay. So how long are we?
Excuse me, point of order. I don't think we can, as far as I know, because we've given it, we've voted on it. I don't think you can actually extend the guillotine motion that's already been agreed.
We can extend again and again and again. I mean, you can either extend to until the meeting finishes, or you can extend in half-hour spots. There's no prohibition against that whatsoever.
No, just let the leaders talk a bit. Leaders just talk a bit.
We're going to adjourn the issue for 10 minutes. We'll come back here at 10 minutes. Again, I'm going to pass over to the Chief Exec, who's going to update us on what the next move is.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Because items 1.2 and 1.3 have been agreed, the Council has in effect set council tax and a budget for next year. So we can now move on and vote on 1.5 to 1.7 en bloc, which is not a recorded vote unless members ask to do so. And then we move on to 1.8 to 1.13, which will be taken en bloc, and that is a recorded vote. However, it's been suggested that to help the time, we do it in reverse, and we will take those against, those in abstention, and those for should be the remainder. So in effect, because even though 1.4 has been voted against, the council tax budget has still been set, and the budget envelope has been set this evening, if that makes sense. So group leaders hopefully will have explained that to people. Does that make sense? Should we move to, through you, Madam Mayor, 1.5 to 1.7 voting en bloc?
Agreed.
Agreed? Yeah. Any against? Any abstentions? Okay, carried. Right, we'll go on to en bloc voting for 1.8 to 1.13, and that's over to Democratic Service.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Aker. So those members abstaining, could they please raise their hands? And those members against, please raise their hands. And everybody else is in favour?
We are.